Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Teresa J. Canada, and I'd like to thank you for subscribing and thumbs up and all comments you're making. And hopefully, we can continue this journey together because we're all in this together. And of course, now more than ever, we need to be knowledgeable. We need to know what's going on, and we need to be educated in all aspects. And this is just my, way of doing that. So I'm thankful that you're here, and I'm going to share with you. Of course, you see a different background. I got to get another. But my book is not up there, and you all know about the name of my book, but the podcast is named after my book. My book is titled "Desegregation of the New York City Schools: A Story of the Silk Stocking Sisters," and basically the podcast, of course, comes from my use of the Silk Stocking Sisters. So if you want to know more about the Silk Stocking Sisters, you got to buy my book. Okay, buy my book. It's a textbook, but still, it's a very good read, if I had to say so myself. Because my brother, he's not much of a reader. When he got a copy, he said, "I loved my book. I got to read this again." So for him to read it twice, all I'm saying to you, check it out. But also, it's available through WorldCat. If you have affiliated with any university around the country, around the world, you can go on WorldCat to see where it is, and you could probably check it out through one of the university libraries around the world, not just the country, around the world. Okay. So check out WorldCat and you'll see where you can find it in local. I know it's at my university. I know it's in Columbia Teachers College, my alma mater. It's at the University of Rochester. So it's at different places around the country, universities that have the book, and you can access it. And if not, I guess it's also around the world. So just go to WorldCat and check out. Put my name in. It should come up. It's the only book that I have is on WorldCat. So you can't miss that one. So you know how to spell my name. You know how to write my name. So just look it up, and then we'll just go from there. But anyway, today I have a brief topic, which I shared. This is a topic relating to my other hat that I wear. I know you all know I'm a professor, but also I'm a clinician and a licensed professional counselor. So I also have that title that I carry as well. And so a lot of my research, interesting enough, deals with psychological aspects of things. Go figure. But when I grew up, you had to do everything. You had to be multi-talented, multi-everything. So that's just how it had to be for me. So I think it goes back to my early childhood education and so forth, because I like to research on early childhood education and early childhood as a whole. And this topic is one I spoke to as one of my speeches. I made it as a Black History Month scholar at a local university. I won't say the name. You can check it out. But it's a good talk. I might as well just tell you the name. It's Wagner College in Staten Island, New York. I was invited to be a guest speaker, and I was able to talk, and I spoke mostly about this topic that I'm going to share today for a few moments, about the psychological impact of school desegregation. And so today it's just a brief discussion, not a lot. I'm not going to go into details. I'm not going to get too proliferate about, the ins and outs of the psychological theories and so forth and so on. That's not happening. Okay, I'm not doing that today. So I just want to let you know that that's something I have been able to do, and that's something I can do. So if you are looking for a speaker, check me out. I'm available. So anyway, today I want to talk very briefly about and my book I label Of Heart and Mind. That's the chapter I talked about psychological impact. So anyway, just very briefly, very, very easily, I want to just slide into this story. And this is basically based upon my experience of being part of this situation of desegregating a school, in a sense, and being in a different environment, and how it impacts children. Okay, because I do a lot of research on children in early childhood. And this is basically a chapter that talks about what young children go through or have gone through, and the research behind that in situations that I've gone through. So I talk about this as a psychological and emotional, not just that, but and emotional impact of desegregation on children. So I'll mention basically child development. This is kind of like the research. Child development experts suggest a relationship between academic achievement and a child's emotional and psychological well-being. Go figure. It doesn't take much to figure that out. Now, mind you, my experience was in the North. Not that it wasn't any different in the South, but emotionally, it was in both places. But people think that the Northern people had it easy, quote unquote. No, it was just as emotional and somewhat traumatizing for those of us who actually experienced this process of going out of their neighborhood schools into other schools that were not predominantly Black college. I'm sorry, was predominantly Black schools. And it was a very different kind of environment, especially when you're 8 years old. It's another wake up call. And so I'm just saying, it's not like you do it in high school, like the Little Rock Nine. That was high school. I'm talking about third grade, fourth graders. Come on, fourth graders, all right? So I don't think parents really understood what that meant or how it impacted their children. Because if they had heard, I maybe some of them did, but I didn't share anything negative about my experience at all to my parents. And I think if I had, I'm pretty sure most likely that my mom would have pulled me out of the school. So I never ever mentioned about anything negative. I just went to school, did what I had to do, and that was it. Did my homework. Luckily I had a good friend who we spoke to almost every night on the phone. That kept me going. If it weren't for her, I don't know if I would have made it to fourth grade, that's for sure. But anyway, that's what you do. You try to find something to help you cope and to be able to allow you to keep going. And that's a human type of reaction. Okay, that's a human doing something that they need to do to be able to persevere. And so that's what I did. I was able, not knowing what I was trying to do, but I did it, and it helped me keep going. Okay, so basically, the experiences that young people took place in the North were pretty similar, if not, maybe not. How should I say it? It wasn't publicized. It wasn't in the papers. It wasn't in the magazines. That's what it was at that time. It wasn't online because there wasn't no online at that time. So I'm just saying, it was not something many people knew about, and it wasn't something that was the large scale. You talk about what happened in Chicago public schools, what happened in Boston public schools. Now, some of that was like in the 70s. Some of that was very vivid, but I'm just saying, as a whole, you didn't see it at the same level of exposure as you did about the South. That's why a lot of people don't know about what was happening in the North, because nobody really talked about it, and it wasn't very visible to many people. Okay. Now, according to researchers, it's said that the most effective ways to bring about change in behaviors, that's the psychological behaviors, is to change attitudes. And attitudes can be modified and, in fact, change, but you have to be exposed to something to be able to have an understanding of what it is. But if you don't have exposure to certain things, then you're going to stay the same mindset. So exposure to different ethnic and racial groups is probably a helpful thing in a way, so that you get a better understanding of how people respond and react. And you can oftentimes change a person's attitude at a young age. I'm not talking about high school. I'm talking about early on. Now, it could be positive one and not so positive one. All right. Because I know what I went through. And I'll be honest with you. Would I want my child to go through that? I don't think so. Okay. So I think in the previous episode, I talked about, I think I talked about what I talked about previous. Well, in another episode, I talked about, HBCUs and colleges and so forth and so on. But I'm just saying, as a whole, if you can get a child, children need to be in a place where they feel comfortable and supported for them to learn, right? And the issue is they need to be in healthy versus unhealthy environments for them to be able to thrive. But if they're in an unhealthy environment, either in home and or in schools, they're not going to be able to achieve what they need to achieve or have the confidence they need to pursue what they need to pursue. So that's why it's very important that we think about the environments we put our children in or other people's children in, but also think they need to be exposed to things. All children need to be exposed to different kinds of children so they have a better understanding of how we're pretty much the same, okay? But it's just how you have to start early instead of waiting to high school, because attitudes develop early on. It starts sometimes in the home and the community, and it persists. But if we still continue to live in these pockets, the way we live in pockets, not much has changed. But it's also, a global thing. I had to say, it's a national thing. It's a global thing. So healthy versus unhealthy environments for children are necessary for them to be able to thrive. And they be developed into healthy adults as opposed to unhealthy development, unhealthy adults, which we have tons of them, and y'all know who we're talking about, right? So anyway, I want to mention that there's a researcher called Nancy St. John. She wrote a book called School Desegregation, and she lists 3 most frequent outcomes of school desegregation. 1, for young children now, anxiety, self-concept, and aspiration. All right? Anxiety, self-concept, and aspiration. Children at a young age may develop, these outcomes. These are the most frequent outcomes of school desegregation. And that's true. It's a development. You become anxious because you're in these environments, and your self-concept is impacted. You question who you are, and your aspirations. Either you can aspire to become something, or your aspirations go down. So now, according to Nancy St. John's research, results from desegregations are no more anxious, higher self-esteem, and aspirations in segregated schools. Positive support by teachers. But teachers are also the key. If you have a positive teacher, you're more likely to be successful in those environments. Now, if you read my book, you find out about the 4th grade where I went to my first experience in that school. The teacher was not very supportive, not knowing what it was about as a young child. My other buddy and I, we figured we got a grip. I don't know where it came from. We got a grip. When she would call on us, and this is true. She would call on the few Black students in the class. I think she and I were the only 2. Well, we had, my Latino friend, 1 Black male, and 2 of us. She would call on students. You raise your hand in your school. You raise your hand if you have if you want to respond to the question that the teacher asked the question or whatever you want to respond. Well, you raise your hand, which we did often. And she never called on the Black students. She never called on us. And then finally, when we would have our hand down, she'd ask the question, and those students would have their hands up. That's when she would call on us. Of course, we don't have the answer because our hands not raised, right? So part of that says a lot about how it impacts a child psychologically. Fortunately for me, my friend and I figured out a strategy. So I don't know where this comes from. I guess it comes from, I don't know if it comes from my heritage. I don't know where it comes from it comes from my culture. All right. We don't go down easy. All right. We don't go down easy. I know I don't. But anyway, what we decided to do, we decided not to raise our hands when we didn't know that we knew the answer, and raise our hands when we didn't know the answer, because we knew the reverse. She would never call on us if our hands are raised. So she's not going to call us. So it means we don't have the answer. So let's raise our hand. But she's not going to call on us. But if we don't have our hand up, she'll probably call on us. And guess what? We decided that's what we would do, my friend and I. And when she did that a couple of times, and she would call on us, and then we'd have the answer, and she'd be shocked. So what did she start doing? She stopped the process of calling on us when we had our hand down. And I believe it's unfortunate. That's what I'm saying about teachers and the impact, what can happen in these schools, how people treat children, young children, and how it can impact their lives moving forward. Because I'm not saying that my reaction to that experience wasn't the same experience my classmates had, okay? So everybody responds differently, and the reaction is differently. And it said to me that I knew that I could do what I needed to do, not knowing what that meant, but it didn't discourage me and make me feel, oh, woe is me. I'm like, oh, we're going to get this together. I know what I'm talking about here. So that was something that my friend and I figured out. And that's how I'm saying emotionally, how that can impact a child. So I'm just talking about, anxiety and things like that. And, it can happen. All right. But also, when you're exposed to other people and they have these answers, and then you have the answers too, you tend to aspire to something higher. You say, oh, I can do this. Oh, this is great. I can, I know the answers like these people know the answer. And so therefore, you're more likely to be able to excel and say, well, I can try something better. I can still continue to be at the same level or just as high as the students who weren't looking like me, if you want to put it that way. Okay. So that's what we decided to do. My friend and I decided to do that. And it was a turning point for me, and not knowing what that was about. But I'm just saying to you how, in a sense, the process impacts the emotional and psychological impact it can have on young children if it's not if it's in a negative way. Now, I don't know what they did in the South. I know the Southern thing, if you interview some of the people who went through the South, it was a little different. Okay. But it probably pretty much is the same. But the thing as a society as a whole, how much more quote unquote difficult it was growing up in the South for Black people than it was for people who were in the North. All right. Now, not much of a difference, but still, it was extremely different in many ways. That's why many people started migrating to the North from the South or going to the West Coast for different opportunities, because they were willing to take a risk to raise their children in a better environment so they can have better education and have better options growing up. And that's what I'm saying. That's the key, to have better options for their children, for the next generation. And then you got to, go from there. All right. So, we all live in segregated societies prior to the 1960s, majority. Not that much has changed, but I'm just saying definitely, okay, because it was a societal thing. But we're not there. We're not there. We're in a different place now. And we need to be in a different place now. Everybody should have the opportunity to live where they want to live, whether the resources be, whatever. Is that actually equal? No, it's not. But the point is, it should be that way. All right. So I'm just saying to you as a whole, child development experts agree that early intervention, okay, in the lives of children would provide the best opportunity for behavioral change in children. So we don't want to wait till high school. We don't want to wait to college. We don't want to wait to middle school, which is called now, which is former back in the day, was junior high school. We need to start early on. Like I mentioned before, 3 and 4 years old, children already identify. They know what a person looks like, and they kind of can see how people are treated based upon what they look like early on. Okay, so we as a country need to get a grip. Okay, we need to get a grip, right? I know some people are uncomfortable with certain people, but you know what? Get it together, because the world is full of people who look like me and more. Okay. And we come in all different shades and colors. So I'm just saying to you, and I'm just saying to you, young people, early on, and how they're treated, how we're treated, young children are treated, can impact their ability to succeed and persevere. Because we need everybody's resources. The way the world is now, we need it, especially in the United States of America. We need it. Okay. You don't think you need it, but you're going to need it. You don't think you need it, but you need it. Okay. And I want to be able to expose what people need to know so they can decide, take this a little bit and use it for themselves. If not, don't leave it alone. Okay. But we definitely need to have a society where every child has an opportunity to excel and pursue what they would like to pursue, to have a decent life and more. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for putting comments, putting thumbs up, whatever you need to do. And please, I appreciate your support of this channel. And anything you want to share, put in the comments, and we'll just follow up as best we can. If you know other people who I can have as guests, I'm willing to say, hey, come check it out. Now I'll have those interview, and we'll have more people moving forward. But thank you so much for supporting the channel. And wherever you are around the world, around the country, around the state, around the city, enjoy your day. And we'll see you next time on the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. Have a good day, everybody. Bye now.